Hi everyone, and welcome to this video on using Excel to create a template for a formula. Now, this becomes valuable when you're going to use the same formula over and over, so for repetition. So rather than applying the same formula separately to multiple problems, you could basically set up the formula in Excel and then just plug numbers into it quickly and easily if you're going to be using it multiple times. In this video, I'm going to use two examples. And the first one's going to be a pretty basic one, the equation of a line y equals mx plus b. And in the second problem, I'm going to apply it to a slightly more complicated formula, the formula for the recursive formula for logistic growth. Now, neither one of these two problems has to apply to the course that you're in. You could apply this to statistics, to algebra, to calculus, to any other, finance. We could use this for any type of math where you have a formula that you're plugging numbers into to calculate an answer. Okay, so let's get started. Down here at the bottom left, you see problem 1, problem 2. So let's go to problem 1. Now, let's read the problem. Well, two problems actually. Use the equation y equals 4x minus 7. There's our equation of a line, y equals mx plus b. To find 4 points on the graph by plugging in the x values, x equals 2, then x equals -3, then x equals 7, and then x equals -9. So 4 steps. We replace x with 2, calculate y. Then we replace x with the -3, right? Then we solve for y. Then we replace x with 7, we solve for y. We replace x with -9. So this repetition here is the same thing, same process 4 times. And then in problem 2, more repetition. Here's another linear equation, y equals 1/2 x plus 4, and then find 4 points on that line by plugging in these 4 x values. So it looks like we're doing the same exact thing 8 times. So what I want to do is just focus on the formula in general. Our formula is y is equal to mx plus b. Okay, so I've got 4 letters here. We've got the variables x and y, we've got the m and the b. In this case, in each of these two problems, the m is given, that's the number in front of the x, and the b is given, that's the constant. So for problem number 1, this is the m and this is the b. Okay, so before we work with any specific numbers, let's set up a template. Okay? So we've got, I'll start with the right-hand side of the equation. There's an m, there's an x, and there's a b. And based on those 3 numbers, I then want to find the y value, right? So we're given the x values, we're given the m, we're given the b, and based on those 3 numbers, we want to find y. Now, you could set up your template visually however you want. Just my method, what I do is, well, first I'll add some color. So I use yellow. So right here in the fill color, I use yellow for any cell where I'm going to be typing in a specific number. And I use blue for any cell where Excel is going to give me a final result. Right now you see a big yellow rectangle. So what I also like to do is add some borders. So I'll highlight those 8 cells. And in this add border drop-down menu, I'll just add all borders. Okay, so I have a nice little table here. Now I'm not going to touch the yellow cells. Those are coming from specific problems. But in every one of those problems, we need to do the same thing, find the y value. So I'm going to focus right here, this blue cell. That's where we're going to put our template. Okay, so I'm just going to type in exactly what's on the right-hand side of this equation, m times x plus b, except I'm not going to be typing in specific numbers. I'm going to be using the location of where those numbers are going to be. All right, so what I mean by that, anytime you want Excel to calculate anything, you need to start with an equal sign. So the first thing you type has to be an equal sign. And then I want to type the letter m. Well, not the letter m, I want the location of the number that I'm going to use for m. And that's this yellow cell right here at the top, E1. So you can either type E1 or use the mouse. What I generally do is I use the mouse. I'll click on that location of the m, right? So E1 is going to be m. Then we want to multiply that by x, which is going to be here in E2. And then I want to add the b, so plus, and the b is going to be right here in cell E3. Okay, so E1 times E2 plus E3. So those are the locations where I'm eventually going to put the m, the x, and the b. Ooh, I didn't mean to hit that G1. Let me go back. E1 times E2 plus E3. Okay, enter. Once you type in your formula, enter, right? So now it says 0. Why does it say 0? Well, these cells are empty, these yellow cells. So Excel is treating them like 0, 0, and 0. If nothing is in the cell, Excel is treating them like it's the number 0. Now, I'm going to go to this first problem, y equals 4x minus 7. So the m, in this case, is the 4, and the b is the negative 7. So I'll type 4 in my m cell. Then I'll type negative 7 in my b cell, negative 7, right? And now this cell here in the middle next to x, well, I've got 4 different x values, so that's 4 separate calculations. I want to plug in 2 for x, so as soon as I type a 2 in there and hit enter, you see positive 1, right? So there's my point. Point number 1, when x is 2, y is 1. Now, I have 3 more problems to do for number 1, 3 different x values. Now, this is the whole point here of making a template. When you change the yellow cells, Excel will automatically change the blue cell. So the m and the b aren't changing, but the x, that's changing. That's no longer 2. So I'm going to delete the 2 and replace it with a minus 3. And when I hit enter, you see the y value changes to negative 19. So negative 3, negative 19. Next x value is 7. I'll delete the negative 3, replace it with a 7, enter. Now I got positive 21. All right, so you see now with the repetition, I have that formula already typed into Excel in that blue cell. The last x value is negative 9, so I'll take away the 7, and we'll put in a negative 9, enter, and there's my next point, negative 9, negative 43. Okay. Now, you're not going to ever delete the blue cell, right? The blue cell is done. That's the y equals mx plus b formula. And so for number 2, I'm just going to delete those 3 yellow cells and move on to the next problem. Okay. The m is the 1/2 in front of the x. So m is equal to 1/2. The b is the positive 4. So next to b, I'll type 4. And the x values, we have 4 of them again. Now I'll just do this quickly. Type in 0 for x, enter. There's the y value. Type in 6 next to x, enter. There's the y value. Type in negative 10 next to x. There's the y value. And then type in 16 next to x. Enter. And there's the y value. Okay, so once, if you're going to be using the same formula multiple times, maybe you see it on the homework multiple times, and you see it on the quiz, maybe you see it on test. If you set up a template once and save it, then you can continue using it in the future. All right, so this was a pretty basic formula. That's what we did was, in this cell, we said equal mx plus b, but instead of m, x, and b, I said equal E1. E1 was where I had the m, E2, so multiply by E2, that's where I'm putting my x, E2, sorry for the handwriting, plus b, which is E3. Okay, so now that we have seen it done on a pretty basic example, we could then apply this to any more complicated problems or any more complicated examples. I'm going to switch over to the second tab, the second problem on the bottom. So I'm going to click on problem 2. Now this is the recursive formula for the logistic growth model. If you're not learning this, then this might sound like gibberish, but it doesn't matter. The problem is not, can you solve this exact equation or use this exact equation? What we're doing here is, can you take any formula and plug it into Excel? Right? So I'm looking at the right-hand side, and I'm seeing 1, 2, 3 different variables. I'm seeing this Pn-1, I'm seeing an R, and I'm seeing a K. So for the logistic growth model, K is the carrying capacity of the environment, R is the growth rate, and the Pn-1 is the population from the previous unit of time, whether it's last week, last month, last year. In this problem, we're talking about years, so that would be the population last year. Not even going to read the problem. That's not the point. The point is to take this equation right here and put it into Excel, so then I could use it over and over and over. So I'm going to start with the right-hand side of the equation. So there's a P. I can't type a subscript into Excel, so I'll just use an underscore. So there's Pn-1, right? Then there's a R. Then there's a capital K, right? So these 3, I'm going to make yellow. That's just my organization system. I'll put in some borders, right? So those are the 3 numbers I am going to plug in. Those are given in the problem, right? The population last year was 3,700. The growth rate is 4%. The carrying capacity is 3,900 deer. Right? So again, you don't have to know what this stuff means, but it's just in general. You have a formula, you're given some numbers in the problem. You take those numbers, you plug it into your formula. Right? And so the left-hand side, that's what I want Excel to do. That's the whole point. This is what I need. And I'm going to let Excel do that for me, right? And so that I'm going to put right here, and I'll make that cell blue because that's that's just what I do. You don't have to use yellow and blue. You could use any colors you want, or you could use no colors. All right, so P subscript N, and that cell is going to be blue. All right, and now what I'm going to do in this blue cell right here, I'm going to type the left-hand side of that equation. Right? But instead of Pn-1, I'm going to use the location where that number is going to be. That's going to be cell B1. And instead of R, I'm going to use the location B2. Now, it's not always going to be B1, B2, wherever you have it typed out on your Excel file, right? And then instead of K, I'm going to use the location B3. So I'm just going to take these 3, put them into the formula instead of those 3 variables, and that's going to go right here. All right, let's get rid of some of this writing. Okay, so in the blue cell, I'm just going to go just left to right, typing in that equation. So the first thing I see is Pn-1. So that's going to be equal the location, B1. Then I see a plus R. So I'll type in plus location of where R is going to be. Then I see multiplication, so that's shift 8, that's the asterisk. Then I see parentheses. Then I see 1 minus, so I'll type in 1 minus. Then I see this fraction. Remember, fraction means division, so it's the slash. So Pn-1 divided by K. So Pn-1, I'll click on B1 over K. So I'll click on B3, close parentheses, and then I'm at the end of the equation here, multiply by n minus 1. So times b1 again. So you see b1 3 times over here in the formula. That's because you see Pn minus 1 3 times in the formula. All right, now it's giving me an error message, dividing by 0. So that's because there's a dividing by k, and right now Excel is treating all 3 of these numbers like 0. That'll go away once I take these numbers from the problem. Right? We've got a 3,700, a 4%, a 3,900, they go over here. And once I type those 3 numbers in, Excel will give me the answer. Right? And let's just make sure that's working. The population last year was 3,700, right? Last year's population, right here, 3,700. The growth rate of 4%. Now we have to change that to a decimal, so we could say 0.04. And the carrying capacity of this wooded area is 3,900. Carrying capacity is K. And as soon as I hit enter after that third number, there's my answer. 3,707.59 deer. We can't have 0.59 deer, so if you want to round this to a whole number, in the home ribbon, right there in the middle, you see these 2 rounding icons. One of them adds more decimal places. The other one takes decimal places away and does the rounding. So we should get 3,708, and there's our answer. Again, if you're not learning carrying capacity and logistic growth, that's not the point. The point is, for any formula, you could type it into Excel, and then let's say I want to use this formula again for the next problem I see in the homework. All I'm going to do is delete those 3 numbers and take the 3 numbers I see in the next problem, type those into the yellow cells, and as soon as I type in 3 numbers there, Excel will give me my answer. All right, I hope this was helpful. It definitely could be a time-saving approach, especially in classes where you have a lot of formulas and you use those formulas often. All right, that's it for this video.